My name is Steve Barsh. Currently, I'm a partner. One of the things I do is I'm a partner at Dream Ventures in Philadelphia, which is a kind of business internet accelerator program. My background is computer science and software engineering. I've run a couple of companies. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I did a company called Sika that we built up that started as a software consulting firm helping companies build higher quality software. And we changed into a software products firm selling methodology products and project management products. And we eventually sold that company to MCI, where I worked for a couple of years as a vice president at MCI after the acquisition. Done several other companies, did an internet company, a Web 1.0 company called iGrandparents.com. And just do a lot of consulting these days, venture work, and still working on new ideas for next companies.
So let's talk a bit about your consulting company.
Sure.
You started this right out of college,
Started it right out of college.
and how did you get the idea for it, and how did it start?
Um, so the way it started was I started doing software development at a really young age, way before I went to college. And as I went through and got my degree in software engineering or specialized in software engineering, I kind of saw that most people didn't know how to build high quality software. And in those classes, they would talk about how do you do requirements analysis and design? How do you test software? How do you really manage a complex software project? And I realized that they were touching on all of the issues I'd been dealing with for the last 6 years at that point, and they were suddenly solutions for all the problems I'd been having. And I thought, wow, not a lot of companies know how to deal with these types of issues. So I decided to build a consulting firm around those software engineering issues. So we started it by going in and consulting with IT departments. Actually, by the time the company kind of grew, all around the world. We worked with IT departments and their software teams on improving quality and productivity. And we eventually changed that again into a software products firm. The margins you make by building software products is are a lot better than just billing by the hour in a consulting firm. So in the end, when we sold that company, it was software products. It was still some consulting and also courses and training and classes.
So the theme I want to focus on in the videos of this series is sort of when you built your company, how did you get users? How did you get customers? And so let's start with the consulting part. You had this great idea for delivering software methodology out of college. You're young. How do you find your first customer?
You start picking up the phone. And literally, I mean, just picking up the phone, talking to people. We started that company in the Philadelphia area, so started talking with companies. And an important point, Gabriel, I'd like to make for other entrepreneurs is we started picking up the phone, talking to other companies before we wrote the business plan. I see a lot of people that come up with an idea and start building a company, but they really don't vet or de-risk the idea very much before they start it. So before we started that company, while I was still in school, I was making calls to companies in the Philadelphia area saying, do you have problems with this? And if we could come in and help you solve that problem, would you buy that service if we could come in and help you solve this problem in building software? And we kept getting the answer of yes. So we built that company, and then as we launched it, we did exactly the same thing, calling the larger companies in the Philadelphia metropolitan area, starting in our own, kind of in our backyard, speaking to the IT manager, saying, these are the types of issues that we can help you with, and started selling to them and selling services to them.
So quite literally, you would call them up, try to find the IT manager, and start talking to them about what problems they had, and you just developed solutions for those problems over time.
Yep, and we got very creative. That company wasn't venture backed at all. We took a little bit of friends and family money, and just really kind of built it from scratch. So yeah, we talked to people. So in a lot of ways, we started doing sales before we even started doing marketing, which in some ways is a mistake, and a lot of people don't understand the difference. That's selling. Marketing is when you're generating awareness, generating leads that then feed into sales. We just kind of jumped straight into sales. What we later realized, which was a much more efficient way to do things, was to start to do marketing. So in that area, we're very B2B. There was no consumer involved in this business. So what we started to do is say, wait a second, there's all these conferences and trade shows. How could we go to those conferences and actually be seen as an industry leader? So then what we did is called whoever was the conference chair, and I remember the first couple of times I did this, was in this industry, was a gentleman by the name of Ed Jordan at the time. I found Ed Jordan's phone number and called him in New York and said, I see you're running this conference coming up. I'd love to come speak. What do you need someone to speak about? Is what I asked him. Instead of having him say to me, what do you want to talk about? I said to him, what do you need? I always like to find out what people want or need. He said, well, really, if you could speak about X topic, whatever it happened to be, that would be great. Great. If I can write a paper and speak about that, you'll have me there? Sure. Sounds good. And started speaking. And then suddenly you're in front of an audience of 400 people speaking, gives me or gives the firm a lot more credibility. So now when we're selling and eventually having a booth, you have more credibility. So don't know if that helps, but then started moving backwards kind of more into the marketing side of things for that industry.
Huh. So, would it be fair to say that at the beginning you were sort of picking off customers one by one and growing linearly,
Mm-hmm.
and then at some point you hit this inflection point where you started doing the marketing,
Yep.
and then it was easier to acquire customers thereafter?
It was much easier to acquire customers. Yeah, and this company never grew on a person basis. I mean, we grew that company to 20 people when it was acquired by MCI. I mean, we didn't. I love small teams, and I'm a big believer that a world-class team of world-class people can achieve unbelievable results. You don't need a ton of people. So we never grew the staff base very big, but that's yeah, exactly what you're saying. We kind of hit an inflection point where by doing these conferences and eventually doing some trade shows, we just started building the business from there. And the other thing I was just going to mention on Gabriel on how we built that business that I think was successful is those same type of companies that became our customers, we would go back to them once we delivered for them and say, you know, you have problems in software testing and you have 1,000 people in your IT department that are writing software for a big bank or something. And is testing a problem for you? And again, this is back many years ago. And they're like, oh yeah, we're lousy at testing. We can't find bugs. What if we wrote a custom class that we want to own that intellectual property, but we're going to write a 3-day course that we're going to put together for you? Now, normally we would charge $3,000 or $4,000 a day for a 3-day course, so it would be $9,000. But here's what we'd like to do for you. If you pre-buy 3 or 4 of those classes and write us a check for $30,000, we're going to, well, not exactly that ratio, but we'll do the classes for half the price. So what we did is for that company, instead of raising venture capital or even angel money, we just raised funding. We raised capital from our clients. So we'd say, we're going to give you a great deal. You pay us up front. So now we have the capital to put the people on it and devote to building the course. We're going to give you a discount on the back end, and we made it a win-win. And we financed that company largely off of doing great work for our clients.
That's really interesting. It seems like there's an interesting lesson from what you've done, which is that the proactive nature of your phone calls and going out and asking people what they want, as opposed to just putting out some marketing and letting people come to you.
Yeah.
I mean, is it your experience that there's a lesson in there that people will answer you, will talk to you if you get them on the phone?
If you get the right person, and now with LinkedIn, it's so much easier, but if you get the right person, and hopefully you can get some level of a warm introduction. I mean, you don't want to go in completely cold, and a lot of that we had to do completely cold. But if you can get a warm introduction, people will talk to you, and I would highly suggest to entrepreneurs, especially in a B2B environment, to lean forward. Don't lean back. Lean into the conversation. Lean into the market. I meet a lot of entrepreneurs that say, I've got the best idea. Every company is going to want this. And they've got their hands way up in the air and they're waving back and forth. Everybody's going to want it. My first question is, how many people have you spoken to? Well, nobody yet. We haven't built the product. I was like, well, wait a second. We haven't finished, building the product. So we can't really speak to people yet. So that's why we need $1 million in another year to finish building it. Then we're going to go speak to the market. It's like, oh, no, actually, I would start speaking to the market before you write a line of code. Start figuring out what they want, what do they need, see if they'll even be willing to finance part of the product development. So that's, I think, another example about what you were asking about, Gabriel, which is leaning in instead of just leaning back. I find most entrepreneurs, though, don't like to lean in. It's a little scary to do that because it's more sales and business development.
And your company made this transition from the consulting to the product company, as a lot of people like to try to do.
Mm-hmm.
Was that just natural because you had all these clients building the same type of software for, or was that a more thought out process? How did that work exactly?
I think is a little more thought out because we started to look at our growth and we said, wow, our growth is going to be so linear. We just had a very simple formula. For every new person we bring on board as a consultant, here's how we have to pay them. Here's how we have to worry about their bench time. Here's how much we can charge. And it was like, okay, this is hard to grow and it's capitally intensive to grow. And we just kind of sat there and thought, wow, Bill Gates and Microsoft just publish a lot of CD-ROMs, and it's like printing money. Boy, if you can get your intellectual property captured as a product, you can kind of print money, and it scales a lot better than staffing. So we actually deliberately went out of our way and said, let's shift the model. We want to grow this and grow revenue and grow profitability a lot better than just, bill by the hour kind of company. So it was very deliberate.
So you sold that company to MCI. So fast forward to igrandparents.com.
Wait, there's one last comment I wanted to make when we.
Oh, sorry.
No,
I didn't
no,
mean to cut you
no,
off. Go
no.
ahead.
It's fine, and then we'll transition. The way we built that product is we pre-sold it to the same group of clients again. Hey, we want to build this product. Wouldn't you find it advantageous if you pay this now? We'll give you a license. Here's what it's going to go to market as. We'll cut the price by 60% for you. You'll get it first. You can have a hand kind of what the product's going to look like. We'll tailor it a little bit towards you. But if you'll help us finance it up front, we're going to cut you a deal like you can't imagine. And have we delivered for you consistently for the last 3 years? Yes. Okay, trust us again. So again, once we again went back to our client base they were our investors. That was our quote unquote VC money. They were our clients.
So once you sold your clients, was that most of your software product base, or was it easier to find new clients leveraging those first clients?
Yes, and then
how did that work?
it was easier because once we had, it's the classic crossing the chasm strategy, and we needed our early adopters. Once we got the early adopters, things started to take off from there, and we sold more and more of it, and people like Gartner Group started to love the product and put it in their magic quadrant, and yes, it took off, and more marketing and more sales.
So just on that specifics, how did you get in Gartner Group? Like, how did you take that first client and your clients and translate that into the other clients?
So let me answer the first question. How did we get into Gartner Group? I know you're going to be shocked by this, but I picked up the phone and called Gartner Group. But again, trying to leverage credibility. Hi, my name is Steve Barsh. Maybe you saw me speak at this conference. Maybe you'd be interested to know that, this bank is using our product. I'd love to come up to Stamford, Connecticut and brief you on what our product's about, what we're doing, and our strategy going forward. They're like, great. Come to Stamford from Philly and brief us. And we did, and started a relationship with Gartner Group. Same thing. We leaned forward into the market.
Okay, great. So let's fast forward to iGrandparents. Tell me a little bit about that. How you got involved in it, etc.
Okay, I wasn't a grandparent at the time, and I'm still not. A group of grandparents in the Philadelphia area had an idea. This was back in '99, and they thought, wait, we have an idea for a consumer-facing website. Baby boomers are growing like mad. They're getting online in droves. Could we build a website for the baby boomer demographic focused on grandchildren, which for grandparents, I think you have kids and usually grandparents are rather doting over their grandchildren. Could we build a site focused on baby boomers that the hook was parent-grandchild relationship? So there were 4 grandparents that had the idea. There were some venture people in Philadelphia that wanted to finance it, and they wanted to bring in a CEO, and I took a look at it. It looked really interesting to me, so I got involved to help build that company from scratch.
So you come in there. What was it like when you came in? Was there a site yet? Were there users?
It was an empty white piece of paper. We want to build a company, an idea around X. And so I took that on and I started one of my favorite places to start, which is to do a positioning exercise. Okay, who's your target customer? What's the statement of need? What makes you unique and different? Who's the competition? What are your key benefits? The classic kind of things that I, to this day, still see a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with. What's your value proposition? They'll go through their whole pitch deck, and it's like, wait, I still don't understand. What's your value proposition? What's your differentiation? What's your positioning? So in every situation I get into for established companies, big companies, or startups, I always tend to start with doing a basic positioning statement, and that's what we did at iGrandparents. Let's create a positioning statement and figure out what is the value proposition going to be here from this company and this site.
So you focused on the grandchild-grandparent relationship. You build the site around that positioning statement.
Hmm?
You have the site. So then what do? You have a huge market, but no one's gone to your site yet.
Hired a PR firm that I love, a company out of Kansas City, Missouri called Inc. Incorporated. They're a pay-for-performance PR firm. And I hired a guy there by the name of Dick Grove, who's a PR master. And I love this is right actually as AdWords was about to come out, but Dick pioneered this model in PR. You pay for performance instead of writing your monthly retainer. If he gets you in the New York Times, here's how much it costs. If he gets you in this, here's how much it costs. A very innovative model. Hired Dick, and we wanted to make a big PR splash, and we did. And we held up the launch of that company, with the opening and launch of the website for 1 week. Dick said, just wait, stay in beta, don't open it up, because I think I can get Tom Brokaw on the NBC Nightly News team there to cover your launch. And I was like, yeah, okay, well, we'll hold it up for a week because we want to make the site look a little better. Anyway, and a week later, he's like, they'll be there tomorrow. I was like, yeah, right, I'll see it. When I believe it. I'll say it when I believe it. And I pulled into work in Radnor that morning, and there was an NBC News truck sitting outside the office. I was like, oh my God, they're here. And we launched it on NBC Nightly News. And, the disk drives turned into smoke and dust. I mean, the thing got clobbered in the beginning. But again, it was a lot of heavy PR and promotion to really get that site off. And a lot of entrepreneurs say, if I could 1% of the market, all I need is $1 million and 1%, and I'm golden. And within a year, we had 1% of the baby boomer demographic on iGrandparents, 1.5%. So we actually achieved that goal. Monetizing it was a little bit of more of the difficult equation in that, but we got them there relatively cost efficiently. But we did get them there. I didn't, by the way, Gabriel, I did not
Yep.
pick up the phone and call them individually. Right? That time I used PR. That's a consumer, not a business. So.
So in this paper performance PR, is that still, you think, innovative in the market, or is something to look out for?
I think it's
Um,
I think it's innovative. Not all PR firms offer it. More do today. Dick still offers it today, and I talk to him about it all the time. I think it's a great model. I mean, so many things in the world now are pay for performance, and the greatest example of that is AdWords, right, from Google. So I think it's a great model, and he still does it today. It can get really expensive. If you're on the Today Show for 3 minutes, it's pay for performance. You just don't want to see what the bill looks like. It's it's a lot of performance dollars there, but depends on what you're trying to achieve.
and so when you did that, you sort of agreed to a paper performance sort of contract up front about all sorts of things that you could get, and
He
you
has.
sort
Yep. It's almost looks like if you go to a Chinese restaurant that has a really, really big menu and you open all the panels with the choices, Dick has this kind of panel menu set up. If I get you in the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, USA Today, or the Boston Globe, or the LA Times, all of those 3 column inches or greater, here's the price. 4 column inches or greater and a picture, here's the price. If and it's all laid out. If you're
so
on
you
CNN for more than 3 minutes, here's the price. So it's known in advance.
so one thing that seems good about that is you could approach it from a smaller budget
Yeah.
and say, maybe I'd pay for one of these things, but if you can get me on some smaller papers to start with or something, they might be cheaper.
Correct. The only difficult thing I found with his model, and he's wonderful, his team is just awesome. And what's interesting, just as a quick note, his team of people that work at Inc. Incorporated are all ABC, NBC, writers, producers. I mean, they play a big Rolodex game, and what they're great at is the art of the pitch. They know how to pitch a story, which most entrepreneurs don't even realize how this all happens behind the scenes. It's not getting a press release out there. That doesn't usually get very far. That's, if a tree falls in the forest and nobody hears it, did it make a sound? Just getting a press release out and putting it on PR web, and you can find yourself with Google alerts. Intense media coverage, if that's what you're looking for, you've got to have a newsworthy hook. And it's not something that you care about. It's something that the media cares about. And Dick and his team are real masters at that. To answer your question, I'm trying to go back and remember what your original question was.
You're right. You answered it. So you once you had this main PR
Yeah,
push.
I know. Just you can splice this in later. What's really interesting about Dick's model is you say, Gabriel, all I want's the small media. I don't want to have a huge bill. And then he calls you on a Wednesday and says, I was just on the phone with the producer of Good Morning America, and they're willing to have that one grandparent on that's like your spokesperson now for grandparents. And they're willing to have them on the Good Morning America segment at the perfect prime time in the morning. Do you want the coverage or not? And you a little bit become like a drug addict, and you really have to look carefully at your numbers and your projections, by the way. Because you sit there and say, okay, remind me how much it's going to cost if we're on Good Morning America for 3 minutes. And the numbers, I mean, that kind of stuff with him, especially back in the boom days in the late 90s, it's very expensive. And you just have to sit there and really carefully watch your numbers. And this is for entrepreneurs that model things like, what's my cost of customer acquisition? What's my lifetime value of a customer? You have to be darn sure that you've got your numbers tight, because you have to make assumptions about how many people are going to see it, how many people are going to come to the site. I think in the past you and I have talked about things like this. How many of those people are going to convert to a user? If you're on a freemium model, how many of those people are going to convert to a paid customer? So there's lots of assumptions, and when it all starts with PR like that, if it's expensive, you better make sure your cost of customer acquisition is in line with what your financials are, because you'll be on Good Morning America and you'll spend the cash, but you won't be able to. They won't even become users. A lot of them will just bounce off your site if you're not doing things correctly.
So your first company, not VC backed, this one VC backed, and you went out with this big press move, and you could pay for that with the VC money, but you wouldn't have known those metrics up front.
Correct.
But it was nevertheless a great move for this company, you'd say, right? And you couldn't have done that in this case without the VC money.
Correct.
So
Correct.
In this case, that is one sort of good push for VC money, right?
Yep. Could be. I mean, it depends. I certainly encourage a lot of companies to bootstrap. And there's ways easier to get PR coverage these days. Between the internet, social media, reaching out to bloggers, you can certainly start a lot smaller and just, if you get great coverage in TechCrunch, if you're going after that crowd, or you get great coverage, through some type of blog and you build it up, it's a little easier to build things up from scratch now than it was in the late 90s. Certainly a lot easier. It depends on what you're trying to do. If you need a big PR push, it can get expensive. You could try to be clever and creative with your PR firm and say, look, what if you put half the money at risk and I'll pay you 2x on that half that's at risk if we're successful at this point, and try to get the number down a little bit. I think the problem is too many startups go to too many PR firms with exactly that model. I want you, I just can't pay. So put it all at risk. And now the PR firm becomes an investor, and the PR firm starts looking at it saying, if I was just taking a check from them every month, it's one thing. If I'm almost becoming an investor, do I really, really believe in the value proposition that these guys are going to make it?
So one thing I've heard about PR firms is, their Rolodex is obviously extremely important, especially for your particular market.
Uh-huh.
Would you agree with that? I mean, if you're going to go out there and pick a PR firm as a startup, will you research that really heavily and try to sort of ask around and to find the right one? I mean, you obviously have one that you like, but
right. Oh, and there's a couple I like. I like his model a lot. And he just actually came in and spoke at Dream Adventures and did a lot of, let me reveal my secrets to you, because you're all so small, none of you can afford me. But as you grow a little bit, you're going to be able to afford me. So I want to show you how to do a lot of the basic stuff on your own, and then come to me when you want more heavy guns. And he did wow, did he reveal a lot of great secrets. It was a great talk he did. But to answer your question, it's a double-edged sword when you say, well, I'm in the travel space. I want a PR firm that really has great contacts in the travel space. Well, if you're trying to get into New York Times travel section, or you're trying to get into Condé Nast or Budget Traveler, that PR firm, how many times do you think they can call the same reporter with yet another company and another story month after month after month? So sometimes it's advantageous because they have a level of relationship. Sometimes it can be where, they can't burn out the relationship. They can only call so many times to try to get placement for coverage. So I don't think I have a clear-cut answer. There's just some issues that are on the table. To me,
sorry, go ahead.
To me, what I look at when I'm talking with a PR firm is to really understand how creative are they? How good are they at the pitch? I'm not as worried about the press release. I'm worried about them helping me figure out what is the media going to find unbelievably interesting to report on. Right? And I like a PR firm that helps me craft that and really figure that out and refine it, and then can help with the pitch and get the coverage. And a lot of times I just worry about in a PR firm are the people that I'm talking to in the beginning, the people that are actually doing the work. Or is it like a consulting firm where you meet with the head partner and then they sign the deal and all of a sudden they back up the school bus with these junior people that are billing by the hour and they're measuring, hey, we got 3 column inches and you owe us our standard monthly retainer of X thousands of dollars. That's not pay for performance. So a lot of things to think about.
And that pitch that they're going to make for you, would that also usually be a phone call, you'd think?
I find today still a lot of times it's a phone call or an email, but there's an art to writing really good emails. Um, there's just an art form. The subject line needs to be a newsworthy hook. So at least you have to get the email open. Then the first line needs to be the next newsworthy hook that you just kind of keep pulling them in. If you don't know how to craft that, whether it's on by phone or an email, I mean, I forget the staggering number of pitches that the Wall Street Journal gets a year. I'm sure it's north of 1 million. How are you going to, like anything else, how are you going to break through that clutter, right? And you have to be really good, depending on where you want to get the coverage.
And as a bootstrap startup, how much do you think the ballpark, sort of the cheapest PR push you could make is with like a firm? Are we talking like $5,000 you could get something
Oh
done?
yeah. You could certainly get something done for $5,000 a month. If
But
$3,000
can
a
you
month,
do it for 1 or 2 months? I mean,
you could. It depends. I guess here's the question, Gabriel. I would ask: what are you trying to achieve? What all of this goes back to what I like to think about. What's the plan? What are the metrics? What are my goals? So if you said to me, I'm building this new search engine called DuckDuckGo, and I want 10,000 more users, 10,000 more uniques per month next month, or 100,000 or a million. Then I start backing down from that and saying, okay, what campaign, PR, social media, what viral components could I build in that are going to do it? What can I do to achieve that? So it all starts from what's your definition of success? What are your goals and metrics? And then it's going to back down. So could you spend $1,000 or $2,000 for a couple of months and that's it? Sure, I guess. It just depends on what you want to achieve. If you're two guys cutting code on your Macintoshes, living out of your apartment, eating a lot of ramen noodles, and and you've got a business model that you're going to charge $9.99 a month for users, and my goodness, if we had 1,000 users, that's $9,000 a month, and you just sure you might be able to do it. You might be able to do it without any PR. Just hitting the blogosphere, building a dynamite product that solves a really big pain for a really big market. You could do it without PR. You could do it on your own. Just social media and the blogosphere and Twitter. It all depends.
so this has been excellent. Are there any other sort of comments you want to get out there about this particular question of sort of problems around or interesting lessons learned about sort of getting traction with your idea?
I think, and Dick said this at his talk, and we had a lot of speakers at Dream Adventures this summer. It was funny, almost every speaker came in. Chris Fralick came in from First Round Capital and actually did us a favor and talked about how do you do business development. He's just awesome at that. And he didn't talk about being a venture capitalist. He talked about all the things he used to do in business development, which is an art form, and he is a master, and came in and talked about that. But every speaker we came in that talked about business development, sales, PR, venture capital, bootstrapping, they all started their talk with the same exact issue every time. What's your value proposition? Who's your target market? And what big pain are you solving? And I can't stress enough, I talk with entrepreneurs about that all the time. They want to rant and rave about all kinds of things, and I always go right back to the basics. And all of these people in all their different specialties and disciplines all started with, you want to talk to a venture capitalist. Well, the first thing that you're going to need to know is, what's your elevator pitch? What big pain are you solving? How are you solving it? What's unique about your solution? So I think the overriding comment for all of this is to be successful, whether it's with the virality for a website, we can talk about that, or PR, or getting people to use your product, it's the same thing. What pain are you solving? And many people have said it, and Brad Feld from Mobius Ventures and Techstars blogged about it. Pain can be measured a lot of ways. Are you selling vitamins? Are you selling aspirin? Or are you selling antibiotics, right? There's different levels of pain. You want to be selling, obviously, antibiotics. It's something that people must have or they'll die. Aspirin, I have a headache. I could live with it. Without it, it kind of hurts. Vitamins, not so much. Let's put it that way. So, how much of a pain, how big of a pain, how many people have it. Then if you line that up, you know, if you try to do, I guess what I'm trying to say, if you try to do PR around an issue that really there's not a lot of pain there, it's kind of neat. You're probably not going to get very far. Maybe you'll generate some interesting PR, but if people really don't have that pain, they might look at your site and find it kind of curious and interesting, but you'll look at your bounce rate is really high. People will sign up for the free, but they won't convert to paid. Then you sit there and go, what's wrong? And I find a lot of times it's the basics that are wrong. It's the value proposition just isn't there, or it's not refined enough and sharp enough.
So here's an idea for you. Next year, video the presentations at DreamHack.
Yeah, well, no, we
So
didn't
you
do it
could,
this year. We thought about it. We didn't do it this
because
year.
they all sound great, and then everyone else could see them.
Yep. We do new, if, at least if you're in Philadelphia. Starting a few weeks ago, we opened all of the Dream It Talks up to the Philadelphia community, which has been great. We've got a lot of people that come in and we tweet about it and we post about it to make sure that people know. But we haven't put them online yet. And we kind of also need permission from the speakers who come in and donate their time for these talks, and just some world-class speakers, and they do a dynamite job. And a lot of them stay for office hours. You know, they give their talk and then stay for 4 hours and meet with companies and help them implement these ideas. So, but we've thought about putting them online. We'll see about that for next year.
So ways that people can reach out to you. You have a website, stevebarsh.com.
Yeah, stevebarsh.com, B as in boy, A-R-S-H, stevebarsh.com. Can email me at stevebarsh.com. Twitter is sbarsh. I'm pretty, and my blog is called Barsh Bits, B-A-R-S-H Bits, B-I-T-S, and barshbits.com.
And Dream Adventures, the summer is already filled, but next year already looking.
Be up and running for next summer. All I would say to people is get in your applications. We had 10 slots for this summer. We had about 350 applications. We took 5 companies that were kind of from the Pennsylvania area. 5 companies were not, 2 from New York, 2 from Boston, and 1 from Tucson, Arizona. So they spent the summer with us in Philly. And boy, those guys from Tucson, Arizona, they didn't even know what humidity was till they came to Philadelphia for the summer. um, but anyway.
Well, I'm from Atlanta, so.
Oh yeah. So yeah, we just say apply early, and I would say if you put in your application, please make sure that your value proposition is extremely intensely crisp and targeted. Because same thing, we go through the applications very quickly, and I'm usually looking at the same thing, and 90% of them get, not 90, maybe 80% of them get knocked out because you read the value proposition and the positioning statement, and it's not very clear and it's not very refined.
Well, thank you very much for doing this.
Thank you.